Are we live, Ash? You might want to let me know, mate. Yep. Let me know when you'd like to start.
We'll just give it a few more minutes to let a few more people join, and then we'll kick it off.
There we go, mate. We're good to go.
Yeah, I reckon we're good to go.
All right, beauty. Welcome, everyone. Thank you to the third session in our series of Peloton and Lumiant on looking at the value of advice. It's a great pleasure to welcome you all again today. And we're going to spend a lot of time today focusing on what world's best practice looks like around in a customer-centric environment. What we have built today is a process to help you educate you on where values fits into the advice process. The series is aimed to explore what we need to do to help this industry become the profession it deserves to be, which in my mind is the #1 profession in the world. We will discuss how you and your business can redesign the deck of cards to drive greater client engagement and a higher economic return while improving outcomes and compliance. Just before we start, as you're aware, you're all on mute. Could you please stay on mute during the presentations? We'll be having a Q&A function post this short for myself, and we encourage all questions today. Please note that this webinar is also being recorded, and we will share this recording with you following the session. The series investigates how a shift to values-driven advice will drive economic return for you, explicitly looking at pricing above the line and the intangibility of advice. Today, we're going to quickly recap on the previous 2 sessions, explore a little bit about Lumiant, and then moving forward, look at simply how we can simply change our businesses. We've been joined today by James Wortley from EFS Financial Solutions, Enlightened Financial Solutions, or also otherwise known as EFS, based in Mackay, Queensland. Welcome, James. And we're also joined by Rob Jones, who's going to help us part of Q&A. Just before we get into some of the content we want to take you through today, I wanted to take a bit of a step back and look at the global trends in advice and what are we seeing. This is based on research from Salesforce, and I think it's really interesting to see where the game is about to be played when it comes to the client experience. The major global trends in the wealth managers industry as it stands today are moving the experience away from product and compliance, wealth managers lacking personalization as they move to a digital, pricing pressures, squeezing margins, and that antiquated below-the-line business models, which is something David and Rob have addressed in the previous 2 sessions. Platforms not supporting advisors and creating the world-class digital customer experience, and experiences not designed to account for human behaviour. What's also interesting is what clients are saying. 53% of clients would pay more to have a range of experience-related factors. 39% of clients would indicate their relationship with their wealth manager has become less personal, and critically, 72% of consumers expect companies to use new technologies to create better experiences. And it's something that we've been arguing through this series, is this shift happens from the middle and back office functions, the creation of documents, to this customer-obsessed mentality of the front office. So what do these trends mean to your organisations? If you read the press, the next big thing coming is going to be robo. And though there's some truth to that, especially as investments become democratized, and we see the emergence of direct-to-consumer tools like Vanguard's personal advisory services, we still have the chance to take the high ground. The new game in town is about having a great digital client experience, beyond simply answering a few risk tolerance, time horizon questionnaires, that automates what can and should be automated, but does it in such a way that the role of humans is reimagined to guide clients along the digital experience, and to do that interpretive and empathetic work that humans are uniquely qualified to do. Not only will this improve cost to serve and enhance the experience of existing clients, it's the only way we can scale advice delivery to serve the millions who are not receiving professional advice today. And I think that's even more critical when we look at what's occurring around the world as it relates to advisors leaving our industry. One of the questions I get asked a lot that I thought I would try and tackle for you today is if we could start again. Now, I'm asking you to imagine you're starting your advice business again. You've got a clean slate. What would it look like? And I quite frankly think these rules for me, I would never be able to be shifted from them. I would focus on a professional management and executive team that have corporatized. It can't be about you or me. Think like a business and realize that replacing yourself is not a threat, but it is actually the critical success factor. And it's okay, all growth requires discomfort. Too many businesses I meet, the person who started the business runs the business. And I think we need to ask ourselves the question, are you the right person to run the business? Or are you the best person to meet every new client that walks through the door? If you're not the right person to run the business, then go and hire someone who's running businesses and go spend your time in doing what you're brilliant at, which is that human connection and relationship with your clients. We have to lead with the customer experience. Clients do not care about your SOA software, your proposal software. They want to live their best life. Focus all your resources on winning this game. It's values that drive clients. And again, this is something we've discussed over the last 2 sessions. This is the new game in town. In my opinion, and I'll deal with it shortly, outsource the $30 an hour stuff. Your time's worth $500 an hour, and it should be only spent in front of clients. Engage the non-CFO over the CFO. This is something I unpacked a little bit and will unpack a little bit more today, but I don't even know why we're debating it. Quite frankly, we've been engaging the wrong spouse in the relationship. It is that non-CFO who's going to go tell their friends about the extraordinary experience they had with their advisor who got to know them better than any other financial profession in their life. Create operational scale and technology. That includes investment advice. Outsource everything, again, that is not client-facing. I don't think it can be any more simpler than that. Anything that is getting in between you and that client relationship should be questioned in your business. We talked about creating a robust pricing process that is outcomes and measurable, outcome-driven and measurable. And value, as Rob talked about and David talked about, value that ingrained intangibility of advice. The fact that you're there, that you have their back, and we'll unpack that a little bit more too later. Create a consistent client experience and messaging across all segments, not dependent on anyone's particular skill or the clients, and all clients are treated wonderfully, regardless of size. So how to frustrate me, when I meet a business, tell me that I have I'm playing it back in my words, a shit service for my small clients and a great service for my great clients. Why shouldn't all clients be treated bidly? And that's just technology, and it's leveraging technology to not only about their money, but their lives. All clients, regardless, their 50,000 is just as equally as important as someone's 500,000, and let's service them equally brilliantly. Create a consistent organic growth strategy. Quite frankly, if you're growing at 5 to 10% per annum, which I hear a lot of advisors talk about, the 20 clients that they're winning a year or the 30 clients they're winning a year, you're going backwards. The cost of technology, the cost of PI, the cost of professional services, and get this one coming, it is coming big time. Staff are going to want to be paid a lot more, and if you don't pay them a lot more, they're going to go elsewhere. There is no new people entering this industry. Pressure around staff and what they're going to want to be paid is coming like a freight train to this industry, and we need to be ready for it. So the only way we're going to be ready for it is having businesses that are succeeding. Therefore, we can afford to keep great people and attract great people. Create a consistent investment philosophy and process. But I want to be clear about this. It should not be product driven. It needs to be client driven. And there's a really subtlety in that approach. The intellect globally at the moment is make it product driven. If you sell everyone the same thing, you'll be more efficient. That, as I unpacked in the last series, on series 2, is an industry. That is a salesman. We have to start with the client and finish with the client, and to find an experience around what's important to them, not us. That's taking into account their tax outcomes. It's taking into account their ethical views. It's taking into account their preferences around investments or asset allocation, whatever it may be. That's what a profession does. It listens and it structures something around what's important to the client, not what I have in my back pocket. We want to be an effective acquirer and integrator, and inorganic growth is critical, but you can't do inorganic growth until you've got everything above this sorted. And I'm sure we'll unpack that a bit with James again too today. How do we purchase businesses unless our systems are working and humming beautiful, unless we've got a pricing mechanism, unless we've created a consistent yet individualized investment experience? We have to get those things done. And lastly, but just as equally as importantly, let's equitize the next gen that are coming through this business. And again, James will talk about that a little bit on what they've done, and show and give them the opportunity to purchase. And it doesn't need to be a lot, but earn your stripes and you can purchase into this amazing business and get them part of the DNA of it. So with that, I want to shift gears a little bit. One thing we haven't talked about yet is anything about Lumiant. So I just wanted to explain a bit of our business. We're a startup. We don't have rich parents, at least that's the way we're thinking. This is not my first startup, but we are running it like a startup. We've raised 3 million to date. We launched this business in February to the market, and we now have 2,500 households on the platform. That's how we get paid, advisors putting their clients on the platform. The tech's coming to life. I'm going to briefly show you that. The team, I think some of the best team I've ever worked with in my life. And one of my co-founders was the ex-CTO of Macquarie Bank's Owners Advisory platform. So effectively, we got together and said, there's a game here that needs to be changed. And I think it's a big part of the reason why we're going to be successful. And we've built this technology stack on Amazon's Web Services Cloud. So what does that mean? We're geographically borderless. And if someone can work with Amazon, we can work with them. It gives us incredible competitive advantages. We're going to continue to raise money. We're not far away from launching our new pre-Series A funding round, which we're going to launch late October, and then move through to a Series A funding round April to June next year. We set out with a really simple mission to radically transform the financial advice industry globally by partnering with advisors who seek to deliver on the promise of helping clients live extraordinary lives, not sell them extraordinary stuff. We wanted to make it about them, and everything I'm about to show you is where we focus. Hopefully we've had some success. And for those Australians on the crowd, we wanted to bring advice, make advice fun again. And I think a lot of, if not most of, we had an extraordinary report come out a few months ago where the financial planning industry is currently has the highest levels of depression than any other profession in this country, higher than any other one, including the nurses and doctors that are going through a global pandemic. Our industry's been beaten up, and we wanted to make it fun again. We wanted clients walking out of a meeting with an advisor going, I love that advisor. I'm going to go tell my friends. And we wanted advisors walking out of a meeting going, I love my job. I do incredible things for my clients. And it's a critical success factor to us bringing fun back to this business. We also wanted to change the conversation to what has been completely missed by our industry, from the CFO spouse to the non-CFO spouse. Quite frankly, and as I said earlier, we've been engaging the wrong spouse. Forever, it's been the CFO spouse who completes the fact on the risk profile, advisor logs on to see how they're going to that benchmark. That same spouse question things when it doesn't go to plan, potentially quite arguably right. We kind of never had a mathematical chance of outperforming any benchmark. It's actually the non-CFO who runs the family, is in touch with everything that matters to them, potentially lies awake at night worrying about their well-being. And just imagine for a second if we could engage them around their well-being and brought that to life, and could prove that everything that they're doing today is allowing them to live the life that they dreamt of, not only today, but into the future. Then imagine receiving up to 4 times more referrals as you engage the person who tells their friends about their advisor. I can assure you the CFO advisor doesn't sit around a barbecue talking about the alpha you created. The CFO will talk to their friends around the barbecue, around the extraordinary advice meeting that they had, that they potentially had a conversation with their advisor that him and her haven't had before or for some time. Yes, it's you and playing the wrong game with a set of cards dealt to us by a product-led industry intent on keeping us unprofessional. In my mind, it's time to create a new set of rules where you and the advice you give become the picture cards. We also wanted to change compliance. We sat down and we thought about it. And quite frankly, to use a cricket term, we wanted to knock it over cow corner for 6. We never wanted compliance to be an issue again. And how would you do that? And we quite simply sat down and went, you got to start with the client and finish with the client. We have nothing to sell them. So let's show that we've improved our clients' lives. Let's not sell them anything. We know we manage lives, not money. Let's create a measurable and memorable advice experience that's anchored around them making better decisions around their lives. Let's make that process repeatable. It doesn't matter who delivers it in your office. It's an extraordinary experience. And everyone in your team knows exactly what's occurring with that client, regardless of where you are in the world. Such a subtle thing, but critically important. We shift the conversation from products, SOAs that drive plans, to values and goals. Let's do what David says and shift the conversation to above the line. And let's help this industry achieve its potential by creating better businesses, not jobs. We think in the process that we've created, we can't do any better to know our client, to scope our advice, to provide a process for informed consent. That was our objective, and we wanted to bring that to life. And that fact kind of make compliance, we don't worry about compliance. All we do is act in our client's best interest. We sell nothing. Subtle, but I think the simple way to achieve it. Just a refresh around what David and I were talking about in the last session. You know, below the line's the old proposition. It's product-based. The new proposition's above the line. We need to move from money to meaning. We need to move the proposition from product to people. I will never forget what David said. Look at most financial advisors' websites and their value propositions. They typically start with what they do and how they do it. What they do and how they do it. Mortgages, risk insurance, retirement savings, blah, blah, blah. That's how they do it. But the best firms connect immediately on a deeper emotional level. Why they do it. They help people achieve what's important to them, their values, goals, aspirations, to lead their best possible life. And it's one of the better quotes I've heard came from a guy some of you may have heard of called Joe Duran. And I remember, and I think, James, you might have been in the room when we heard this. Advisors charge for what they should be giving away for free. I got a better below the line stuff, and give away for free what they should be charging for, helping people lead their best lives. What and how is below the line. Why is above the line. When it came to above the line, like everything in Lumiant, we decided to reimagine it. Now, I reckon this slide kind of says it all. Probably don't need to say too much, but it's a little bit inspired by someone you may have heard of called Carl Richards. And I think he nailed it. When it comes to personal finance, what matters is not beating the index. What matters is meeting your goals. They're not the same thing. An index is just a broad measure of how a particular market has done. Think of it as the average. The average industry seems to think that their entire profession in life is their entire purpose in life is to convince you that the best thing you could do is hire someone to beat an index. For the purpose of this discussion, let's set aside that whether that's even possible or even matters. Pretend you live in a magical fantasy world where all your dreams, according to the investment industry, come true, and you actually beat every index per quarter for your whole life. Congratulations. Let me just be clear about something. It's still possible, even under that fantasy scenario, that you don't live your life remotely to truly what matters to you and your partner, and you do not meet any of your financial goals or get remotely close to living your best life. The answer is, let's flip it on its head. The worst thing in the world happens to you. You again, according to the investment industry, you slightly underperform the index every quarter for your whole life. But because of the careful financial planning with the client, not the product, your clients live an incredibly purposeful, driven life, and you help them meet every one of their financial goals and live their best life. Are you happy? The answer is obvious. It's yes. We need to stop worrying about beating indexes and instead focus on your client and that incredible human connection that you have in that first meeting. So to taking a deeper dive into values, and which this whole series has been about and valuing the intangible thing that is helping people live their best life. This is the way we looked at it. Our survey focuses on the 8 dimensions of well-being, which is scientifically researched in the pursuit of wellness and making choices for a more satisfying life. As you can see, these dimensions pretty much take into account consideration of every aspect of your life, from your finances to your occupation, physical well-being, and even the environment where you live. What's important to note is each of these dimensions cards actually means something different to every individual. The role of a good advisor is to uncover those underlying motivations behind each card. This information then allows you to better serve your customers based on what that underlying drivers are and where you need to support. How it's done is that an advisor does it digitally or in person, sits down with him and her and her, him and him, and asks them to deselect their 16 cards down to 5. Then we ask them to prioritize those 5. And then we ask them one simple question: why is that the most important value in your life? Now, I know James will attest to this. 3 to 6 out of 10 clients who get asked the question, why is that the most important thing in your life, will have an emotive response. Some will cry, some will weep, some will choke up, because it is about them. And what we found extraordinary, and one of the wonderful, purposeful built things around Lumiant is we started to track it. And so far in Australia, over 350 value sessions done. These are the top 10 cards. What I love about this, it's not roll over my super, help me get to retirement, I need my insurance done. Support and protect those I love. And I can guarantee you off that card, you're going to get 4 to 6 things you need to do: retirement, insurances, estate planning, tax structuring, accounting work, mortgage broking. That one card could mean so many different things to so many people. Who are the people you want to support and protect? Let's understand who they are. Anyone who's got a sales instinct in them will know that is a really cool thing to know. Become more active and healthy. Who would have thought? But that comes down to budgeting potentially, or making time in their week, not working as hard, changing careers. There could be a whole bunch of stuff that you want to support them to come out of that. Feeling confident in my finances. I don't think I need to prove that to the financial planning industry. What that means, dedicate more time to those I care about and nurture my relationships to the top 5. Interestingly, James and his team have been through more value sessions than any other one on our platform currently. Pretty identical, but this is the part that I want to say to you that's really important. A lot of people read these cards and go, oh, what does that mean? Blah, blah, blah. Don't care what you mean. It's what your clients think. And what's interesting, and I don't know if this is relates to where the demographics of James's business, but the second card for them is avoid being a burden on my family. Of all their clients that have gone through, the number 2 is avoid being a burden on my family. And what does that mean? Well, okay, we'll sort the insurance out for straight away. You can see what we've done. We've subtly switched it. And a big objective of Lumiant was how we could switch this conversation from selling, I've got something in my back pocket, I'm just going to get to know you, to serving, let me unpack everything that's important in your life. And with that, I'm going to help you live the life that you dreamt of. And I'm going to track you to it. The last part, before I take you a brief zip through it, is the other part we've measured is how people feel around their financial life. It's called Your Life. Goes out to every client before they come into any meeting, be it an upfront or a review. Also has a mini fact find at the back of it and unpacks who's the most important people to them in their lives. And this is the aggregate score of every client who has a financial planner already on our platform. So these aren't people who are unadvised. These are people who are advised. And they're only 6 out of 10. There's a lot to work on. And in an environment where we've got to evidence what we're going to do for our clients in the next year, the measure is this. How can we prove to them that they've gone from 61 to 71 to 81? That's the coolest thing. That's better than any benchmark. That's the game in town. And so we're really proud of that. That's being used by every advisor. It's also part of our freemium product. So if you, as of next week, if you want to come on and use us, you can go and start using that with your clients on free on the platform. So Ash, with that, I'm just going to take quickly into Lumiant. Now, can you tell me if my screen's changed?
It has.
Unbelievable. All right. Just quickly for everyone, because we kept getting questions on the 2 previous sessions. Can someone show me Lumiant? Here you go. You're in the tech stack, you're in the client experience, the advisory experience, and the client experience identical. We set out to create the world's best customer experience and user interface. We're not there yet, but hopefully it looks pretty cool. The first thing we track in the platform is someone's well-being. Now, the well-being is a combination of all the tools of Lumiant on the platform, but you can show how your client's well-being has improved by the value of your advice. Catches financial and non-financial in the platform. I talked about your life. That's the survey. So I'll quickly breathe into that, and you can see what the client sees. There's their scores from answering it. You can see how they've aligned as a family, where they're different, where they're similar, and you can go and unpack all their scores. Pretty simple as that. You can capture the conversation between the scores. You can see their family connections, and if they've completed a fact find, you can see that. Again, all on the platform. One of the cool little widgets we're about to launch in it. Some of you may have heard about it already, but Amazon's Alexa technology. It's the ability to press record and record every part of the conversation that occurs in the platform. Think time savings on file notes, think compliance. Yeah, that's gone over cow corner too. The values is the 5 cards you just saw. You're just looking at the output here. They also get to rate how they go into those values, and they can assign goals to those things. We capture how each one of the clients answered their values questions. So they each got 5 cards, remember? And we can look at their partners' values also in the platform. The output of that looks something like this. These are the top 5 they chose, and this is how they've rated. They're going along with it. So we've anchored that experience. When it comes to goals, we track all the goals in the platform to do. Really quite critically, we link goals to things that they said was important to them. The reason why we're working on this is because you said it was important to you. All the to-dos we're doing, the nice to haves, I should note here, these are the dreams, nice things we'd like to have if we could achieve them. And critically, dreams come true. And probably for the first time anywhere in the world that I'm aware of, track everything you've ever achieved for your client in one place. So your clients can log on and see how all the great things that you've achieved for them over the journey of your relationship. Such a subtle thing. Currently, all this sits in a filing cabinet. It's utterly nuts. Clients need to be able to log on and see the great things you've achieved for them. You can do the same for tasks, set up the tasks in the platform. We're launching a nudge capability in the platform, so you can send an email or text to your clients and say, did you do the thing you said you're going to do? And again, critically, all the tasks that you've ever done in the platform are stored. You can go back and log them in so the clients can see over the lifetime of your relationship, everything you've done for them. Again, why this stuff sits in a filing cabinet below us. We also have created investment preferences, which is an educational series. So I don't believe there is a risk profile in the world that has protected a financial planner from being sued. And I will take anyone on that subject. It will come down to what the client said. If it's not in your file note, the client didn't say it. I've looked at this so many different ways for so many years. And with our partners, we came out with the idea of informed consent. Let's show that we educated the client. And off the back of education, we made an informed decision. Clients rank what's most important to them as it relates to their money. We just solve that. And if they want the cheapest thing that's around, great, we do that. If they want something highly tailored, great, we do that. But clearly, as Rob would have said last week, you'll charge more. If they want more tailoring, they want more customization, charge for it. Fantastic. That's what the client said. So meet them. Don't have the best product in the back pocket. Have your best ideas in your back pocket and then educate your client, because obviously you're the professional. But we need to prove that him and her educated. And critically within the Lumiant platform, every client is educated. Him and her must go through every component of Lumiant. They must complete your life. They must complete your values. We track both their goals. Investment preferences is done by them. Tasks is done by them. And then we also integrate their wealth. So whatever their investments are, if it's in a self-managed super fund, we can look at their asset allocations within the regions. We can track their savings accounts. They can add them in manually. We can connect them. This may have timed out. It has timed out. So just bear with me 1 second and I'll refresh the screen so you can see what it looks like. It needs to time out because obviously we are dealing with people's wealth. Give me 5 seconds. We've got all their investments in there. We want to connect a bank account. Simple as that. Connect it, link it, go into it, link to ANZ, put in customer CRN and password, and it brings the details in. Also has an affordability report on the back of it that captures how they spend. Press a button. Savings are dealt with. Liabilities are the same. We can bring those through. And insurances can be held on the platform. Also, so clients can log on and see their insurances, not have to ring your office. The real highlight of Lumiant is this ability to, at the press of a button, be able to launch everything you just covered today into a high fidelity document. I think of it as a statement of advice, but clearly I'm not one to follow the herd. I think a statement of advice, it means advice, not sales products. But this document was intended so that you, at the end of an advice meeting, could give something to your client and say, wow, this is what we covered today. These are the things that we're working on, tasks, goals, and so forth. So that's a brief look around Lumiant. I'm now going to stop my screen share. There we go. And I hope that was useful. Now we're going to switch gears. So James, brilliant to have you, mate. Thank you for joining us today. I probably could spend the next 5 minutes talking about your CV and the amount of awards you've had, FBA awards, top 50 awards, Barron's top 50 and so forth. So let's assume that you know what you're talking about, mate. But firstly, thank you for joining us, and how you doing?
Yeah, very well. Nice and busy. Beautiful sun up here in the gateway to the Whitsundays. Had a nice couple of days at Maggie Island. So sorry for you, New South Wales and Victorian people.
That's all right, mate. We appreciate the empathy, and you may even get an NRL grand final before you know it too. Mate, can you give us a bit of background around EFS, please?
Yeah, so for me, probably my background, first of all, is I did a Bachelor of Business in Accounting. Straight out, went to a bank and went through the actual process there of going through the banking scenario where you're doing lending and all the way through to business banking. And then stumbled on one of my mates was doing this thing called financial planning. And, oh, what's that about? And then he sort of told me and said, okay, look, this is real game changer. This is something you can do to be able to change people's lives. And straight away, that's something I just went, that's what I want to do. So I started studying and then joined Westpac as a financial advisor. So I think I had about 8 or 9 years there at Westpac, and then had the opportunity. So talking to Rob Coombe and Mark Spies at the time, they offered the opportunity to be able to buy those clients and set up a magnitude practice. So I did that back on the 1st of April, great dates, 1st of April 2007, just before the GFC and April Fool's Day. So it worked out really well. Myself, an assistant, and now we've grown to 14 staff. So we've got 3 business partners, 2 other financial advisors as well, and then 9 support staff. So we're going pretty well. Just to give you guys a bit of an idea about our business as well, we're ongoing revenue actually as of yesterday with some of the clients that we've just brought on. We're about $3 million in ongoing revenue, 380 clients. Our business has been growing 20 to 25% year in, year out for the last 4 to 5 years. So we are in growth phase. The business is structured for that. Yeah, it's going really well, and just can't wait for the opportunity over the next 5 years, because there's going to be a lot more opportunity coming up.
You've done a lot of the work, mate. You've got all the bases in play. And Rob, feel free to jump in too, mate, and ask any questions. Now, in series 1, I sort of used the analogy butcher dietitian. Now, I know I used to be a butcher. Were you ever a butcher? And if you were, I know it's sometimes a hard conversation to have publicly, you know, what's been the major shift to becoming a dietitian or a doctor and now focusing on this values-based advice?
Yeah, and that was the call. Westpac, again, it was a bank. We were selling product. We knew what we were doing, and still in the back of my mind was still helping people. So again, if people had money sitting in cash, a good way is invest their money. They're going to make some more money. So there was always something in it for me that I always knew that from a client's perspective, they're going to be better off. Probably my transition was before the magnitude opportunity, because I was pushing to go, this is not working, because I couldn't keep on looking after new clients, because that's what the mantra was in the banks, is continue to bring on new clients, more revenue, and that's all great, but it's at the expense of your existing clients, and that's the one thing that I just couldn't cop. So I was going to move from Westpac, had the conversations with these couple of great guys in the industry, And that's where the opportunity came. So ever since then, it was look after existing clients and then have the opportunity to be able to work out which clients you actually wanted to deal with going forward. So it really goes all the way back to 2007, 2008. Making sure that we're doing the right thing by our clients. Look, there's a product at the end for a lot of that advice. I think probably the big game changer was a conversation I had with you, and I mentioned United Capital, and then after 1 week being in a Zoom interview with you and United Capital, and then 6 months later being at a boot camp was unbelievable. So that's probably the transition through that sort of 2017, 2018 for values advice was a game changer for me.
Well said. We've been discussing the importance of the client value proposition and ensuring it's anchored above the line. Could you explain what your CVP is and what it's based upon now?
Yeah, and one of our mantras or our client aspirations is it's about you living your best life. And that means so many different things to different people. So the one thing I always talk to our clients about is you get one chance at life. You might get another couple, but usually you get one chance at life. So we work really hard. We do all the things, hopefully, that we want to be able to do. But then once we do retire, we want to make sure that we're utilising all that wealth that we've actually built up for you, because you've earned it. You need to be able to spend it. But again, being a financial advisor, being there 25, 30 years, is the amount of times you've seen people work really, really hard in life and forget about maybe the family is not as important. It was all about work and wealth creation, and then getting to retirement and then having some type of health issue or even passing away. You then go back and say, look, have you lived your best life? So it doesn't have to be financial. Have you lived your best life? And I keep on coming back to everyone that I talk to is, are you guys living your best life today? And if you're not, what are the things that you can be able to do? And that's probably where our client value proposition comes in. We want to make sure that clients are living your best life. We've just gone through the AFL Grand Final. How are those guys in that echelon of the best players in Australia? They do it through a coach. And that's what we do. You need to make sure you've got some accountabilities in your lives. And I think that's where we're in a fantastic position as the financial advisor, because we can look after the financial side, but we can also make sure that we connect values and making sure clients live their best life. So that's our client value proposition.
There's some pretty purposeful statements in there, James. But not for the first time this week, I had an advisor say to me, but this is not suitable for older clients. Why would I be asking them about values? They just want to make sure they have enough money before they die. What do you say to that? Yeah,
I'll just, one little other statement I had in here was, you don't want to be the richest person in the cemetery. So that just, it was just a Rotarian. I was at a Rotary meeting on Tuesday night, and one of the guys said that, and that just sort of brings it all back into place. So, but yeah, so for us, I went off tangent. What was the question again?
Well, really, this idea of the purpose around we hear that retirees they just want to make more money and they want to have enough money to live their life until they die. But this values conversation sounds like it's almost critical to your success with the clients. Is that a true statement? And do those clients love the values process?
Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing for us is we actually didn't give our clients a choice to be able to go through the actual program. It was a process. So after what we've actually built and what Lumiant's about is, how can you not have a conversation about values for your clients? You just can't do it. So we don't give our advisors any choice, that they actually have to run through this process. And the reason why I'm so confident about it is because we learn. The clients that I've had for 25 to 30 years, we are learning so much more. And I think advisors actually got a habit of, especially with long relationships, 20, 30 years, that they know you really well, they know about your family. So an annual review might be talking about family and everything else, but actually pushing back on the financial advice and what we're actually supposed to be doing. I was guilty of that as well. And I think relationships can get stale after probably even 3 years if you're not changing things up. And this is the change up, is values. It doesn't matter how old you are, if you're 18, you're 35, you're 80 or 85-year-old clients as well. Values is important to them. And And the card that we talked about is avoid being a burden on my family. That was number 2. Again, I look after a lot of retirees, and that's why that card's there. It is more on that retiree basis where they see what their mum and dads have actually gone through, whether it be aged care and how they've been dealt with. They want to make sure that they've got everything covered, but vice versa. They don't want to have all that money sitting there in the cemetery when they can actually pass that money off to their kids and actually just see them use that money and actually be better off as well. So it's they're the deeper conversations I'm having with those retirees now in their 80s, where they've done everything in life. They haven't got too many other goals, but certainly when we're talking about values conversations on where they want to be able to go and what's really important to them, family comes back as always number 1. So what are the things that we can actually help now for them to be able to have that?
Living rich. Sorry, you go, Rob.
I know you're going to ask some of your questions, but a question just came through from one of the people listening in. It's a great question, actually. So if you don't mind, I just want to address that and ask James that point. And for the listeners, thanks for listening in again. And I know James very well and his business, having worked with him and still doing. I just want to put that one in. James, a question came through around the type of clients. Have you got a preferred type of client profile that you want to work with? And I suppose the answer to that means, is there a profile that you don't necessarily want to work with? And I know you and I have chatted about client profiles and the types of clients that we all as advisors want to work with. We know that not every client is going to remain with us sometimes, and they probably shouldn't, because if they're actually not disposed to wanting to take advice or don't see the value in it, well, there's no real point sometimes. So do you have a client profile that you don't want to work with?
Yeah, we used to have 4 where to play areas. We've now, after our July business planning meeting, we've actually brought that back to 2. So that's pre-retirees. Used to be 55. So now it's 50 through to retirement, and then also retirees. So that's our core. Not to say that we won't look after accumulators as well, but it does come back to it. There's a cost there as well. So we're talking about minimum fee of $4,000 a year with the way we actually charge our services. Yeah, pre-retirees is probably where we're sort of back in. We get a lot of people that are selling businesses, selling grazing properties or cane farms as well. So there's a fair bit of wealth that we're actually providing advice for those particular clients.
Yeah, and look, it's a tough one too, though, mate. Like, and knowing you guys and the way that you work, and it's a great business, right? We're not just here to blow wind up each other and all that type of stuff. We're here to give information across. But having worked with your advisors, you guys fell into, I suppose, the same bucket that many advisors often do, and that is, certainly when I was having chats with you, was sometimes the advisors were constricting their value a bit. I know from your perspective and speaking to you separately, right? And we went through this process of running through scenario tests and training, all this type of stuff. You've got a certain way of sharing your value, talking to clients, unpacking that relationship quite well. But you've got different people in your organisation, and your advisors range from, old, very experienced, through to the younger generation. And how important is a framework for unpacking that value, and especially having a Lumiant things like for me? And if you didn't hear the last 2 weeks, I sort of talked about Lumiant from my perspective, if I can just share that with you, that I saw it as an opportunity not to just prove how valuable advice is, because advice is already valuable and we've proved that, but it was to really make sure advisors understood. So it's more for advisors in my world to understand just how important they are in the lives of their clients, in that health, wealth and family environment. How important has that been to help your advisors across all different ages to really understand the value they're delivering?
Yeah, and we meet regularly. We meet every Friday morning for 2-3 hours and just talk about going through our Peloton experience, and same with Lumiant as well. So we're always sharing ideas, which just makes us all a lot better. It's probably the best thing, the best call out for any advice business there. You need to make sure that you're sharing best practice with all your advisors. But each of those advisors are all different, because again, with Mike, who's getting late 50s, he's picked it up really well. Whereas some of the junior or younger advisors sort of in their 30s have struggled a little bit with those conversations. So, it's the Lumiant's fantastic. I think when we just bring it back into value, that's probably the critical part. That's what we're talking to our clients. Clients want to be able to understand is, what are the value you're providing, and also what are we being charged? So are we getting the value of what we're actually paying you guys? And that's where it just becomes so much easier with, again, Peloton Partners there. going through your list of services. This is what we're actually delivering you. But guess what? This is also about how much work that's actually associated with each of these services. So we've actually got that there to be able to talk about that value. But yeah, so I think that Lumiant, it's the one I do get a little bit frustrated sometimes. So I'll try not to jump on my high horse, but advisors forget about some of the really good advice is not about product or investments or anything like that. It's life-changing advice. Some of the advice that we do about stopping clients from making a bad financial decision. But we forget about that. We don't remind our clients about that either. So that's where the values comes in. What's really important to them. Again, we're talking about above the line. And also, again, we're all financial advisors. This is your client value strategy. Everyone does investments a little bit differently. We decided to outsource that so we can just focus on client value and strategy for our clients. But as we've got 5 financial advisors, if we bring a client scenario up, we're still getting 3 or 4 different strategy options. So if you go to another advice business, they're going to probably have different strategy options. So if we're saying we're the best advisor, does the client actually know about that? So that's really important as well. So, okay, everyone's going to have their different tact on different strategies for clients. So if strategy is your number one client value proposition, then, geez, you're going to have to show that really well with your clients to be able to do that. But when you're talking about value and above the line, what's really important to clients, understanding what their values are, what's really important to them in life and how we can help them is that's the game changer. That is, because and I'll just segue now, just from a risk point of view, we've got superannuation now. They're actually going to measure all your performances based on your superannuation. Vanguard's coming there. So if your value proposition is based on strategy and investment and what you're doing, you're going to get worried. Well, you should be worried, because if you're not outperforming these indexes or benchmarks, you're in trouble. So that's where value advice comes in. That's, I just thought everyone, if you're not doing, and I'll throw in goals-based advice, if you're not doing goals-based advice and values advice, your business is going to struggle, I think, over the next 3 to 5 years.
Good. I'll ask a question on that one, James. So I've met so many great James Wortleys around Australia. There's practices all over the country with brilliant advisors like yourself, but they haven't been able to replicate yourself. So I just want to know, how important to you was it to create a process that wasn't about you? It was a process that was about the client. And how important was to have technology to support that?
Yeah, and we've been working on that probably for the last 5-6 years. We're a corporate business, so it's not about James, it's not about Scott or Mike. It's about Enlightened Financial Solutions. So in the event one of our advisors is away, then another advisor can just slip straight back in. Again, we've got really good administration staff as well. So they'll talk to our clients and they'll have a better understanding. They might be able to solve a lot of things as well. So I think corporatization is really important in relation to that. But secondly, it's just the technology structure. I know we're all burdened with it, especially we just haven't had that one technology solution for all of us. And it's costing an absolute stack of money as well. But I think that's where Lumiant really is going to be a standout, or what we're trying to achieve there is scale. Is that like I look after 45 clients. We want to really push it back to having at least 100 to 200 clients that each advisor is looking after. So again, we're talking about 380 clients over 5 advisors now. So we've got plenty of opportunity. The only opportunity that we can do this is making sure that we can scale through technology. But and again, these systems, when you're talking about values, it doesn't have to be done by the main financial advisor. It can be done by your junior financial advisor. It can be done by a paraplanner or client service officer. I think that's probably the big change in all of this from a technology point of view. And technology as well, communication with clients is critical. That's the number one that I don't think our industry, and I can still say industry, I don't think we're a profession yet, but the industry hasn't coped well with. It's either emails or phones. That gets a little bit lost, text messages and things like that. But having a central tool that we can communicate to clients, they can actually go back in and check. Again, we've done the MyProsperities. 10-20% of clients will go, yep, that's fantastic. The other 80%, they might use it for a couple of weeks and then it just gets lost again. So from a business point of view, we've got to look at, number one, what's important to the business, but more importantly, what is the client getting from a value perspective? And I think that's what a lot of advisors miss. It's okay, look, let's be efficient. This is what we want to be able to do, but always look back on what the client is, what's their experience that they're getting. And that is probably the big call out, I think, for our industry to move to a profession.
Sandy, there are a couple of questions that have come through that I think are really good ones that we should answer. So can I just ask those of you, if that's okay, James? And a really interesting one. There's a couple actually, but just let me address one that I saw a little bit earlier as they move up. This has come from someone who has a really strong interest in this, and I know well. But she's asked the question about how has the conversation around client value and living best life helped your clients that move from that hired to retired phase of life, and helping them to get over that whole identity piece, which can be quite, challenging for some. And if this had been asked of me some years ago, I would have said, great question. I really don't know, because I may not have necessarily had a tool to help a client to understand, the other things that are important to them, and why that, getting over that phase could be easy. So do you think this process has helped with you discussing those types of issues with clients?
It's a game changer. It changes everything. I couldn't have said that 2 years ago, because we're talking about the conversations that we're actually having with our clients and giving them an understanding, especially coming up to retirement. What are the things you need to be able to expect? What are the things that you should know? What are you going to do in retirement? How are you going to deal with it? Again, when you've got a spouse that's actually at home, and then the other person retires and they're sitting at home twiddling their thumbs going, what are you doing? That's if they haven't had a conversation about retirement before that, that's an issue. But when you're doing values, and especially when we've got the cards there, it just leads us to the conversation.
Yeah.
And I think there's probably a good differentiation, I think, between goals-based advice versus values advice, because goal-based it's advisor-led. The advisor is actually having a good conversation. We're peeling the onion. We're getting sort of 3-4 layers in. But the difference with values advice is when we've got cards that can promote the conversation, they're the ones that have actually picked it. And that's the difference, because that allows us to be able to have a conversation in relation to what's really important to them. And I've had this conversation with Sandy plenty of times, is some of the conversations that I'm having with our clients, the other spouse hasn't had that conversation before with them ever.
Yeah.
So it is a game changer. Retirees, it gives them perspective with what are the things that they actually want to achieve in their lives, especially once they've actually worked really hard for it. Health is a huge one. It's sometimes health hasn't been their number one priority, whereas they want to make sure that their health becomes a priority. What are the things that we can be able to help and build some accountabilities around that?
So do you think, and this was a challenge for actually us the other day, we're working with a firm and we came up against the non-CFO question. And before I ask you another question that's come through about your someone's asked a question about where does EFS, what do you do on the investment side of things? But before you answer that, just this issue I talked about, the non-CFO. So I asked the question to the advisor, tell me about the other partner. Are they engaged? Has there been any a conversation there or process there? And the response was, I think, fairly typical in my experience today, was that, look, Rob, not really. We tried that, but the sort of person didn't say too much. They were in the room, and there was a lack of engagement and intimacy between the non-CFO. So does this process sort of force, is probably the wrong word maybe, but how does it force the non-CFO to become more engaged?
Yeah, it is. It's forcing them to come in, because I would say 25% of that non-CFO spouse won't even come to the meetings.
Yep.
They won't come in. So how we change that is, we have forced them to say, okay, we will need to go through this process with that non-CFO spouse, because the one thing that I don't think advisors really understand yet, they're the ones making the decisions.
Yeah.
It's not the CFO. The CFO, the non-CFO spouse is actually happy for them to be able to tinker around with investments and restructuring. They don't have any interest in that. Yep. But if they're talking about retirement decisions and what they're looking to do, it's the non-CFO spouse that is actually making that decision. And It just keeps coming through with every interview that I've done. Again, I've done a lot of these, so probably up to nearly 100 interviews. So and sitting in with the other advisors as well. But
Yeah, that's excellent. And it is about pulling their issues out as well. Well done. Mate, there's a couple of other things. How does EFS outsource the investment component? And we've got some other questions coming through. So can you address that one?
Yeah, quick one. We use implemented portfolios with the NetWealth platform, and we use BlackRock iShares as part of that. We believe in dynamic asset allocation, not about picking fund managers and doing that. So,
yep.
I'll keep that nice.
Not every client can afford advice, James, and their best life and paying for that. And this is a question that's come through as well. So how do you sort of deal with that? I've got an answer too, but I'd prefer to get your response. It's an affordability question, I suppose. What are your thoughts on that?
It is. It's hard. Like, I would love to be able to open up my advice to everyone that could afford it and charge an hourly rate to be able to do that, but we just can't do that from a business perspective. There's no profitability in there, and it's loss making. In the end, it is loss making. So the way that we deal with it is upfront. So when a client rings, how can we help you? We've actually got an advisor that actually goes through and talks to them for 15 to 20 minutes, have a good understanding with what it is. But we are also talking about minimum pricing as well and what to expect with the interview process that we go through. So if it becomes an affordability issue, the client will just go, okay, that's thanks for your time, and then just move on. Or alternatively, we'll actually refer them to another financial advice business, which we've done plenty of times as well. Again, we're 380 clients, that $3 million, where we're not for everyone. And probably the big call out for most businesses, that's what they need to do. You can't be everything to everyone. Aged care, look, that's fantastic. But if you're only doing aged care advice once or twice a year, it's not profitable for you to be able to do that. So
now having said all of this, and because I know your business and you, we discussed the concept and built a discount framework with you, which in a way, and in my old business, we always had 5% of our clients that we actually deliberately delivered pro bono advice to, or even advice at a loss. And I know that I believe that's an important part of our job as advisors, and I know that's something that's been important to you too. I believe that if there's a framework in place and there's a rational reason that we can sometimes deal with clients that have an affordability issue. But for me, it's addressing the affordability issue in the first place, because if a client needs to invest in their future because there's such a really strong reason for that, then we should be dipping into how they spend their money and cash flow and going through a whole series of events to see whether or not they can actually afford the advice and afford it because they absolutely need it. I know it's a discussion for another day, but affordability and providing a genuine discount framework that makes sense and is fair, I believe, is part of the financial advice framework, and it's something that you've discussed and with me and you felt important as well. There's another question that's come through, mate. There's a few actually, and actually one was just stand by 1 second, because I don't want, there's a couple that have shifted up I want to get to. This one was sort of addressed to the three of us, and it relates to the physical office, or having a physical office, or going to clients' home or online as a way to build a sustainable practice. So, I mean, knowing you and knowing the way that you guys operate with your video interaction, which is such a powerful thing, and I know that ASIC is looking at this very issue and you're involved in it, which is, I think, is awesome.
When you say ASIC and involved in it, you better draw the good context there, Rob.
No, the good context is I know, James, if you don't mind me saying, that you are working with ASIC and others around whether or not the viability of going full virtual, if you want to call it that way, through an SOA. But in the interim, you're actually been videoing your meetings with clients and sending to them afterwards and focusing, so you could just say to them, listen, you've seen a lot, and we've talked a lot about what's happened today, but you might have forgotten it. Here are the sort of salient points, the things that you need to know, the call to action and so forth, which has been powerful. And that online versus physical, I see no difference in your practice.
No, there's not. Again, we are so lucky up here with the Whitsundays, where COVID really hasn't been an issue for our business at all. So we can do it digitally, but majority of our clients, 99%, are still face-to-face. So it does. But again, I know James Williamson in Sydney that's doing a lot of great things, bringing on a lot of new clients, doing it all digitally. So it can easily be done. Just a little segue just with the video advice, because we have been doing video advice now for 2.5 years. Where we're actually leading to and I don't want to give too much away, but the FPA is really pushing this hard, is there's going to be an opportunity to be able to do live video advice. And so we do video advice, we send it out to clients, the clients come in, we present the advice, or we ask the questions and get the understanding and consent. This is another level. So we're number one in the industry at the moment. This is going above and beyond that. So, and potentially that might be the affordability point of view, where we can charge hourly rates. I think that's where some of that will go if businesses want to be able to go for that client value proproposition. So
yeah, very good.
There's huge changes coming through. And if you're not doing video now, you're going to get lost.
Yeah. Now, another question, mate. How has this process helped you to develop a clear fee structure?
Yeah, pretty well. It actually worked out really well. Remember, we were talking about Lumiant and Peloton and the timing of that, and we actually said to Lumiant, we're just going to hold off. Let's build it into the Peloton process so we can actually price it in, and so it makes it a lot easier. So when we're actually talking to our clients when we do the review, that Lumiant becomes that process, because when you're talking about raw emotions, that's the values conversation, and then you're talking about fees. It becomes a lot easier to be able to talk about, especially if it's going to be an increase in their fees and the value they're actually providing to them. So it was really seamless, even though our interviews went from, instead of 1 hour 15, it was going 2 hours, sometimes a little bit over 2 hours, which we've never done before. But it was seamless because we had it all priced in. We knew exactly what the cost for delivery was, with obviously Peloton's help, and we just haven't had any issue. But probably the big game changer, Rob, is it's the new clients. So a lot of the new clients, we might have charged $5,000 or $6,000. We're now charging $8,000 or $9,000 or $12,000 for that advice, and it's the right fee for the right client. And this is the percentage fee that really frustrates me, as you know. But that the old model that's linked to product and things like that, it's not going to be around. We had one client there where an advisor charged them a 1% fee. It was over $2 million, so they're charging $20,000. Our pricing came at $13,000 to $14,000, and plenty of profit in it for us as well. And we're actually going to provide a lot better service for that client on top of that.
Yeah. So, and you've sort of echoed the sentiment of this series, I suppose, that you know, the objective is right fee for client, right return for business, and it's never been, you know, pricing is not a matter of gouging. It's about a framework, the right framework.
I'll add one little thing there, because we've wound up about 6 self-managed super funds in the last, before the end of the financial year, because the clients actually didn't need it. So as part of that winding up, is the ongoing fee is actually going to reduce for the client. So, but doesn't that make sense? The client, there's not as much work for the client. We shouldn't be charging them the same fee. It should reduce.
Yep. Sandy's telling you
funds under management. There's no changes.
No, Sandy's telling you to shut up now.
I am not. No. That question, Rob, was asked to the three of us, so you need to ask it. You need to answer it too. Is it important to have a physical office or going to the client's office, home or online, in relation to building a successful advice business? I might frame it, Rob, and then get you into the detail. Yeah, if we look at the best in the world, it's Vanguard's personal advisory services. So I had the pleasure of spending 2 days with them in Philadelphia. It's 180 billion they look after. Last check. They have advisors, CFP advisors banker them in Philly and Dallas. I think there's over 1,000 now, and you can get your advice for 30 basis points in a digital online experience, your money managed, tracked, goals, so forth. So there is no doubt, if you asked me 3 or 4 years ago, I will advise clients work digitally with us. And even after seeing Vanguard, I was like, maybe not. Clearly with the world that's happened now and the experience, and this debate's live, so you can Google it and you'll get a lot of good information around the world to support that. Clients prefer face-to-face, but they're happy to meet digitally. And again, and to the question, I don't know who you are, you have to start with the tech. If you've got your customer experience platform right, and you've got that under control, and you can run your client through that customer experience platform, then you can deal with them digitally. If you're dealing hand-to-hand, pen and paper, notepad dependent, digitally is not going to work.
Yeah, well, from mine, I can only speak to the facts, mate, on that, and that is we've noticed no difference, even during this COVID period, of advisors connecting with their clients, delivering value, whether face-to-face or not. My biggest issue, and it's always been my biggest issue with advisors, including when I had my own practice, was advisors not reminding clients occasionally about the reason that advice was so important back when it was originally triggered, why it's important now, and why it should remain important for them into the future. If we don't remind clients occasionally, and James knows our process very well, we either sometimes have to put it and slap it in their face a little bit, because clients forget. I'm sorry to say, they forget the great advice moments. They remember certain things, but sometimes they need some subtle sledgehammer of reminding them. And it's not so much to just prove your value to them, it's to prove the value of being advised. And I find that it doesn't matter the forum for that. Whether it's face-to-face, whether it's over the airway, whether it's in their home, it doesn't really matter. You can build value into a sustainable practice if you're constantly proving the value of what you're delivering and getting clients to consent to that and acknowledge it. It's the firms I worry about, to be honest, and I've got some I'm working with now, are the ones where they've let this drift and let it drift so long that it's become transactional in nature, or worse, clients start to look at you through the lens of a single meeting and a catch-up and believe your whole value is tied to that. And that's my biggest issue with this whole discussion around pricing and value and everything else, is we're forgetting the importance of why clients should be investing in their future for whatever their reason is, and for whatever their need is, whatever their hope, their dream, their belief is. And that's what you tease out, Sandy, through your process. But if we forget it and we don't remind them, they forget it too. And I don't want the firms I work with to be viewed through the lens of a single meeting or 2 meetings or what have you, because that's just going to constrict value. And when value is constricted, price is constricted. So I'll get off my high horse, because there's another question that's come through for James. James, it says, how do you uncover the client's true values for what they initially say may not be what their core value actually is? Perhaps it's more of a, does the process allow a deeper level of unpacking than perhaps what a client might be willing to share with you at the outset? And before you answer this, I remember a couple of years ago seeing Santi, and he threw some cards at me, and I've got an advisor, as most people who may have been on this have heard, and my advisor knows me reasonably well, very well, I'd like to think, but I used the card process, and it actually got me at a couple of levels that I didn't expect to. I thought it was a bit of a gimmicky thing when Sandy first threw it at me. Here we go. Another bloody advisor spruiking something that I won't ever use. But it actually uncovered a couple of things too quickly and surprised the hell out of me. And I thought, wow, that was the start of my journey to appreciate this more. I'm not an investor, as I declared to everybody else. I'm not a shareholder. I don't get paid for this or anything else related to Lumiant, but I felt that was the connector there. So how does it help you go deeper, obviously?
Oh, yeah, absolutely it does. It's probably the one thing I'll also say is it's a moment in time. So when the clients, and I'll give you an example of this, at the moment is, okay, this is what our 5 cards are. We'll talk through the values and we'll do the why. It might be the 5 whys. Let's try to peel that onion right down to that sort of 5th, 6th, 7th layer to have a really good understanding with what's really important to the clients for it. But one of the cards that we've actually got, and I think it was coming through from Sydney, is be more socially active. So with that particular card, as again being locked up in Victoria and also New South Wales, is we're really seeing a big shift for advisors talking about values, that is becoming one of the key cards that probably wouldn't have come up, well, absolutely wouldn't have come up 2 years ago. So the one thing probably for the advisor to understand is this will change. Your life will change, circumstances will change, health will change, your cards or the client's cards will change automatically. It's just, that's just the way life is. It's just not this highway that we just head straight down. We're going to move. We talk about it. What we do is we got the guardrails on the side, and when clients sort of move off the road, we're there to be able to push them back and get them online for the journey that we're actually going on. So that's really critical, and hopefully that answers the question. But yeah, certainly the core value is it can change. It certainly can change. I know who we are today. We learn our values from our parents, generally, or the people that we grew up with. And that's one thing. If I ever get stuck with a client that they can't sort of understand or give me answers in relation to what these cards and why it's important to them, I'll go back to them and say, what was life like growing up for you? And then straight away you get them talking what was important. We had no money. We wanted to make sure that for the money that we had, we wanted to save it. We were never given anything. We've made our wealth by ourselves because we didn't get anything from our parents. So everything just changes. But yeah, that's probably the beauty of this values is these cards are going to change. In 12 months, like we'll see it 6 months, it's already changed. But in 12 months' time, these cards and clients' values will change.
So it's funny when you're saying that. I'm an ex-detective in Victoria Police. I often tell people that, but we were taught very early on, never ask a client, well, maybe they were clients, customers, criminals, whatever. Anyway, we were told to never ask a question, obviously, that has a leading answer of yes or no. So we got very used to who, what, why, when, how. And thinking about this a little bit, and perhaps those cards, and I know I'm not a Lumiant client, Sandy. I'm aware of that. I'm working on my advisor for that. But those questions, there was in my current process, there wasn't enough of those questions. I didn't feel to really get me to actually speak out and actually respond. And what I liked in the process is the responses kept asking me to give a better response than a yes or a no or a limited framework response, which is what you're after, aren't you? Because that's going to really uncover everything. And when you uncover everything, that's the value right there being sorted out.
Yeah, and their emotional responses is that, I'll probably have at least 1 in every 3 will have tears. It's nearly probably 1 in every 2. And again, it's just from every advisor is getting the same. It's just we all do a fantastic job talking to our clients. And the big thing is listening. We do it really well as financial advisors. So, and that's what this process is about. Is just asking that next question that sometimes we just don't do. Then asking the next question, and if it gets a little bit difficult, then we know we can sort of hold off and park that and come back to it at a different time.
James, you talked a bit of a nugget in there, and maybe we got missed. But you talked about, in my mind, we're paid to change plans, not write them. And you talked about guardrails. I'm just curious because the process is intended to identify more than 1 or 2 goals. How are you going in creating goals, and how critical is it, again, that technology supports that setting up of the guardrails?
Yeah, it's fantastic. Like, we're probably standard like most other advisors, especially retiree clients. You wonder what type of goals you've got. It might be, okay, I've got this amount of income, want to make sure that I'm going to draw down my capital or have enough money for my legacy. But going through the values, we've gone from anywhere from 2 or 3 goals to 10 or 12. And it comes back to it's the conversation is what's important to them. If they want to be more active and healthy or avoid being a burden on the family, it just opens up so much more. And the one thing that still comes back, and we're talking about David in the first meeting, is that above the line versus under the line. We're starting to see probably half the goals are above the line. So this is not financial advice as we previously had. This is advice that the clients really want that support to be able to live their best life. And it's game changing. It's just, there's no other words to say it.
So I got Rob in my mind now. How do you charge for the non-financial goals?
Pay me and I'll tell you.
Yeah, intangible. It's like Rob keeps on saying every time, but intangible value is what clients value the most. Not your meetings, not your what you've actually done from a strategy point of view. It's the sleep at night, making sure that the peace of mind, knowing that I'm there to act for my clients at any time. And when something happens, they know that I'm going to be here or my team's going to be here. That's what people pay for. But
and you hear it all. You hear it all the time, don't you, James? Like advisors ask me all the time, well, how do you price the value of advice? And so I put it into the 2 categories. There's an investment component that clients need to invest in their circumstances, and that's the value bit as well. So we can price that. And then there's the core services that, and a lot of them are very similar to other firms. So you're pricing the moving parts then of the service as well, the doing bits, and you can price both. If you've got an old framework that is a single factor pricing model, it's impossible to do it, I'm sorry to say. So having a framework that it can dig into those types of issues, you can price, as James said, intangible value and the value of advice. And that's the connector for clients into the future. So it can be done. It's not easy. It takes time. You need to build it. You need to do it right, but it can be done. It is being done. and it's been done very successfully. And you're a classic case of that. I know your numbers, James, and I know how well you're doing on this project. And congrats to you. You're doing a hell of a job, you and the team. It's not just about you though. Your advisors have all lifted. They're all doing what they were asked to do, and doing it very competently. So well done.
So I want to change tack in a sec, just to the businessman that's James Wortley. But before that, there's one more question, follow-up question. My question was more about a client not being able to afford the things that they need to do to live their best life. For example, say a client wants a holiday every year, but the client can't afford this. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, we talk about the different trade-offs. Like, this is critical with what we're doing. And again, what we're going to build with Best Life is there's trade-offs in life. Okay, I want to be able to go on a trip. Does that mean it's going to cost $10,000, or does that mean you can actually go camping and get away and spend $500? It really comes back to what's really important to the client. But again, it's still measurable. Is that you can't tell people go and put on your credit card. It's got to be affordable. But like we had a client a couple of days ago, got some really bad health issues, and financially probably can't retire today. But when we're talking about values and what's important to them, that potentially they may only have 5 to 10 years of life left. So we are having a completely different conversation with our client about values on what are the things that we need to be able to do to get him retired now with what capital that they've actually got to be able to live a comfortable, valuable life, live their best life. Best life, and I'll say this, and I get pretty passionate about it, sometimes it's not about money. That's really important. It's not always about money to live your best life.
Thanks, mate. So to change tact on you a little bit. So I'm now looking at the CEO of EFS, and over all the things that you've done over the last few years, how has that changed your role? Has it changed it for the better or worse? And what have you learned from the experience that you could impart to other businesses looking to go down this path?
Yeah, it's difficult. It really is difficult, that balance between being a financial advisor and being the CEO. Luckily, I've got now 2 really good business partners. We just brought Mike on as our 3rd business partner, but that allows us to be able to diversify some of those responsibilities of the work that we do. But again, we're self-licensed as well, so there's more responsibilities on top of that. But the one thing that we have recognised is that we are so busy, it's not funny. And I know I'm talking to a lot of other advisors that are in the same boat. Is probably what you said at the start, Sandy, is making sure, how do we go from our 20%, because that's what our face-to-face time is at the moment, how do we get to 50%? So that is our key strategy for the next 3 months. What are the things that we need to be able to do? Obviously international outsourcing is one we're looking at, but probably the more important one, which we've held off the last couple of years, and that's probably been a viability point of view, is putting on a manager. We don't want a CEO, a general manager, because I am a bit of a control freak, as everyone knows, and I change strategy really quickly. We're lucky we've got a really good strategy coach as well that sort of keeps me within the guardrails. But so it is definitely very difficult to be able to do. But it comes back to, I know not all business can support those type of roles as well. But you just got to do what you can do. But still come back to what's our number one. Our number one is making sure that we give great financial advice to our clients. So that's our focus. It has to go back to the client. What are the things that we need to be able to do? And sometimes the CEO role, efficiencies and everything else, we need to be able to go and park that and just concentrate on making sure that we're delivering the best client advice and the best client experience and memorable moments for our clients.
Fair to say the work that you've done, though, in corporatizing your business model, so your customers are getting an incredible experience regardless of who delivers it, has gone a long way to allowing you to be the CEO and play the role that you're probably born to do.
Oh, yeah, certainly has.
That's been the critical move.
Yeah. That was 3 or 4 years ago where from a strategy point of view, I think Steve Browning from the Strategy Institute, who we've been working for since 2014, is just brilliant. But it's about strategy. It's not business coach. It's being a strategy coach. And okay, what are the things that you need to be able to do with your 5 goals to bring it within 2 years? Can you do it? And you just completely change the advice. Again, for us, we brought on 3 advisors in the space of 12 months. Could we afford it? It was slim, but we did it, and now we're actually getting the benefits of actually those big decisions that we had. So again, where we are today, what are the things that we're looking to do? Again, trying to get our staff to be more CSOs. They're doing a lot of our client sign-ups now. We won't need to do that. So more client face time. That's our focus.
Perfect.
We can scale it. We can look after 200 clients.
I know Rob falls off the chair when I say this, but I did, and it's funny to watch him fall off the chair, but I did do a webinar a couple of weeks ago in the US. This business was doing 43 billion it looks after, and their objective was to get to 90% client-facing time with their advisors. Here we're just stuck doing a whole bunch of stuff that just simply adds no value to the client relationship. And that is probably the number one. If I could go into every business and turn the dial, I would be that one. Just stop doing the stuff that doesn't add value, and go be good go be great at what you're great at, which is that human connection and relationship. Now you're back off the chair, Rob.
Yeah, no, I saw that. But out of the 110 firms that we've worked with this last few years, that there is one firm that stands out from that perspective, Sandy, I have to say, and I've never seen it before and never thought, I actually didn't think it was real until we went in and really tested it out. But they've got, and a single advice firm as well, I might add, has 16 client meetings per week, and the advisor is just totally focused on that and that alone, and does it successfully. And it's the most extraordinary client profile, extraordinary business I've seen in a long time, and it stands out on so many different levels. It's actually based in Brisbane, and it's just, it gets close to that. It's probably, I'd say, at around 70% client facing now, moving even further up the dial. It's not to say it hasn't got issues, but huge, just an absolute process of seeing clients firstly and responding to the ROA SOA process that follows, and incredible.
I couldn't agree more. And there's a whole machine trying to keep us away from seeing the clients and focus on stuff that doesn't matter.
I know.
And that's the machine we've got to challenge. And hopefully it was a big part of the last three series. I've got a couple more for you, James, before we wind up. What advice would you give the audience today who might be considering implementing above the line advice and changing that value proposition?
You need to do it. You need to start doing it now. It's that is your client value proposition of the future for all financial advice businesses. I just feel if you're not doing that, you're going to get lost with just another benchmark of returns. But values advice, like the one, I'll just come back to what's important to me, why I do this job and why I'm so passionate. It's about the clients. So why wouldn't you want to know more about your clients and actually have a better relationship with them and work with them for them to live their best life? It's a no-brainer. I think out of the 20,000 advisors that are left, we're still here, we're still hanging in based on that. It's compliance, that's obviously it's something that we have to deal with, but our passion is talking to clients. So the more we can actually be client facing with our clients and actually help clients live their best life, it's crazy. So that's why we want to make sure that for our advisors, there's no choice. You must do a values conversation with every individual client that you see. And we're seeing the benefits of that because again, when you're dealing with 20-year clients and you're learning more about them, you're going, what have we done for the last 20 years? How come we haven't asked these questions before?
Yeah. Mate, I'm just having a moment there because I'm a Queenslander, right? So I know we grew up with no shoes and we're lucky to get through to adulthood. You're in a rough tumble place in some respects, country people. Surely there must be some blokes who walk in and go, this is nuts.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
and what happens?
Again, they probably, that's at the end of it, because we'll just say, bear with us. Let's just go through this process. And there's some people that go, okay, yep, look, I'll give it to you. It was actually worth having the conversation. And they're real. I don't think we've actually had any negative comments. There was one guy after 6 months when we go, okay, yep, how'd you go through that performance looking back 6 months ago? He goes, I don't particularly would like to go through that again. But they're again introverted, doesn't share feelings even with his wife. So we've got to be really wary of each individual client, and probably just a jump in there as well. Don't have any expectation from any of your clients that you know, because it's the ones that you go, this is going to be easy, that aren't, but versus the ones that you think are going to be really difficult are the ones that you actually get more pleasure and value out of. So it's really important that there's open mind to every client that you talk. When you go through the process, the client's leading you through it. They're the ones picking the cards. You're just there to be able to have the conversation, and any of us can do that.
As it relates to review meetings, mate, this question just came in. Do you talk about performance at all and how portfolios are going?
5 minutes. 5 minutes out of a hour meeting, hour and a half. Just, yeah, performance doesn't come in. Mind you, we're still doing projections. So again, the video advice will be, we still have a big issue where your client comes into a meeting, they walk out the door and go, wow, what was all that about? So we do a video, a quick snapshot of what did we go through in that meeting, and we go through the projections that we actually went through. So we're still doing the projection side, because that's retirees. Their number one is their money going to last? As long as they know that, that's really important to them. And have they got enough money to be able to do the things that they want to be able to do? That's their core. What do they want to do from a previous financial advice point of view? The values then completely changes that. It's just, yep, okay, that's tick. Yep, money, performance really doesn't matter. We know that this money is going to last us, but now we're talking about values. What are the things that you really want to be able to do to live your best life?
Rob, there's a couple there quick for you, mate. Sorry, how many support staff did that Brisbane firm have?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 support staff, which may have changed. This was a couple of years ago. 5 support staff, 1 advisor. So this firm decided that they would be heavy in the back, light in the front, where solely the owner just saw his clients, and that's it. So he structures 16 meetings. By the way, this guy is 67, 68 years of age, 69, I think, loves it. And just recently came back to us and said, hey, listen, where's my go phase? Because he's now in a go phase, but has 6 people supporting him. And I know it sounds a lot, but the most profitable firm in the country that I've dealt with. And I've seen 600-700 firms, including mine. And this one is at the top of the range, and it's genuine as well because of that service proposition. It's not for every firm necessarily, but it's a standout as far as we're concerned.
Okay. And there's one more question there. I might ask that person that relates to the 80% client time to just email me directly, santiago@lumiant.com.au, and I'll get Rob to answer that because it might be a bit detailed. And we're running out of time. Question, James, last one. What's the future of financial advice in this country?
The future is around, it's going to be video and recording. There's no doubt about that. That's the only way we're going to be able to scale and be efficient. So we record all our meetings. Doesn't matter what meeting it is, digitally or face-to-face. We're doing all that, which saves us a huge amount of time on file notes. But then the big one, the big call out obviously is our FASEA standards, is client understanding and client consent. Is that we don't do a good job. If you haven't got in the file note, you didn't do it. So again, it's versus your word versus the client's word. So, but when you've got a recording there, it really doesn't matter. Again, I know the big licensees won't like that because video advice is, okay, that makes it really difficult for them to be able to do a compliance audit on something like that. But it certainly is going to be the future. Scalability, like you talked about, Sandy, it'll be 200, 300 clients that each advisor is going to be able to do. But you've got to be technical. You've got to have that technology stack to be able to do that. So more face-to-face time as well. I think from a compliance and red tape point of view, that will start to go away. We're moving into a profession. I've got no doubt we're moving into a profession. So that's why there's so much opportunity. We've got these baby boomers coming through for the next 5 to 7 years. You're going to have the most opportunity that you probably ever had, ever before. So you need to make sure that you're geared up for it, that you've actually got that support staff and trying to bring these younger financial advisors in and coaching them as well. So look, it's going to be a great opportunity for the industry moving to a profession.
Well said. And I think I can give us all a bit of hope. You know, the US, again, it's 10 to 12 times EBIT for the sale of an advice business. Here we're 5 to 6. So we're leaving 100% on the table. And I can tell you the difference between them and us is they act like a profession. They systemize all their processes. Their people know their roles. They are 70 to 80% client facing. Their job is to spend time with clients. They're not doing meeting a BDM, a switch form, or an ROA, or picking a fund manager. Their job is to spend time with clients, and they do that brilliantly, commercially, like no one else I've ever seen. But that's the game, right? We're talking about doubling what we could sell our business for in the future if we get this right. So
they also price profit well, most of them, from the experience that I've had with them. And that's the bit that we're trying to change as well here, to bring that back into the equation. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, be proud of it. Well said, Rob. And look, that's a perfect segue. Thank you to Rob, to David Hines, to Ty Cockle, to James Wortley. This has probably been the best video or webinar series I've ever been involved in. Just extraordinary content of people that have been involved in it. And we've had people from all over the world listen in. So thank you guys for making this an extraordinary outcome for hopefully the people who intended. It's been a great pleasure on behalf of Lumiant. We've got incredible passion for this industry. Hopefully it comes through. Hopefully it continues to come through. And hopefully we all get to work with you one day. Stay safe, and we look forward to catching up with you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Ash. Thanks, Andy. James.
Thanks, guys.